Happy New Year!
Would you like to save yourself 12 minutes per week of listening to ads like this?
Well, Club Retrospectors members get an ad-free feed on their podcast app, plus weekly bonus bits and freshly baked episodes every Sunday.
And right now, you can try being a member for free. Visit patreon.com/retrospectors for a week's free trial. Or click subscribe on Apple Podcasts for a 14-day free trial.
That's patreon.com/retrospectors or click subscribe in Apple Podcasts.
And hurry, because the offer ends January the 18th.
It's January 12th, 1895, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Ariel, Rebecca, and Ali, the Retrospectors.
Hardwicke Rawnsley and Octavia Hill sound like the names of National Trust properties, but they're actually the names of the co-founders of the National Trust, who, along with Robert Hunter, founded that charity responsible for maintaining much of Britain's landscapes and estates. Today in history, in 1895.
Its intention, as it said itself at the very beginning, was to set aside the best and most beautiful parts of Britain for the public and for posterity, and to provide sitting rooms for the poor in the countryside, which I found interesting. But it sort of fit into the spirit of the age, because both environmental and social concerns were really commonly voiced in the UK around the late 1800s. John Ruskin wrote about the need for beauty and for the creation of beautiful things. Likewise, the British textile artist William Morris was a keen supporter of the preservation of open spaces. And there were actually three other societies that existed at this time. The Commons Preservation Society, which tried to prevent illegal encroachment on common land.
Who are you, Commons Preservation Society?
Right, yeah. The Kirill Society, which was...
Logo didn't look good on a tea towel.
Yeah, that was trying to plant trees and flowers in urban spaces to make those nice for people. And the Guild of St. George, which was trying to acquire land to be cultivated and then given over to people or turned into schools and museums. But there really wasn't anything that attempted to do all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about a few of these late 19th century schemes before. We've talked about Alexandra Palace, the fight to save Epping Forest. It was all part of this idea that not only did British heritage and countryside need to be preserved and protected, but it also needed to be made accessible to the people. And there was often a bit of a whiff of benevolent paternalism around these schemes. They tended to be spearheaded by liberal intellectuals on behalf of the common people. And they did sort of work on the assumption that the urban masses were physically and morally stunted. You know, even as you were saying, Arian, they're calling it sitting rooms, you know, for the poor. The idea being they might be sitting in saloons or gambling dens if they're not sitting here.
I did see an amazing quote from Octavia Hill, which was something along the lines of, "We must give the benefit to people for whom they have no country house." And I know exactly what you mean, and it's a good-hearted gesture.
Who are these people?
That would be the majority of the British people, then, who have no country house.
I mean, Octavia Hill was an interesting one because she was a real pioneering social reformer. She came from a family of radical intellectuals, but she herself grew up in sort of genteel poverty. But she was near that. You know, she had the education. She saw what that could look like. Sir Robert Hunter was a London solicitor, and Hardwicke Rawnsley, he was an Anglican vicar. He was Canon Rawnsley. And the story sort of begins with him, really. He kind of got the whole thing moving because in 1883, he was engaged in a classic countryside pursuit, trying to block a construction project. In this case, it was a railway line in the heart of the Lake District that was supposed to transport slate from quarries around Lake Buttermere. And his campaigning on the topic made it kind of a cause célèbre for this growing movement of people who had come to see natural beauty spots as a sort of shared commonwealth. Because that seems obvious to us, but it wasn't necessarily that important to people before. Because if you think about, like, through the centuries, humans just hacked down and pulled down and grabbed whatever they needed.
Well, what is London? You know, like it's a city that's built on either side of the Thames, essentially ruins the Thames, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't really until the Industrial Revolution that a sort of new mindset came in, because people suddenly realised that the Industrial Revolution had made possible a scale of development and consumption of resources, which meant that landscapes could be completely depleted and destroyed in a way that humans on their own couldn't have done before now.
And I think Rawnsley was right to campaign on that particular one, which was an island in the heart of the Lake District that he saw was for sale. And he was so perturbed by that idea because it is a place of outstanding natural beauty. And, you know, I say this as a proud Briton. There are many pleasing views in my home nation. But honestly, there's not much in the UK that you genuinely call beautiful, I don't think. You know, there's the Highlands in Scotland and there's the Lake District, right? Actually, like breathtaking beauty rather than this is pleasant. And this island in Grasmere is one of those few places where you're like, well, this is obviously world class. You wouldn't want to ruin this with a quarry. So I think he had a good campaign there to actually illustrate, if we don't do something now, this beautiful place, this place of Wordsworth and Keats, is going to turn into a rubbish dump.
Yeah, although he also had in mind, even at that early stage, that as well as the preservation of land, there should be this attempt to acquire manor houses and so on. He gave a speech at the National Association for the Promotion of Social Sciences in Birmingham in 1884, during which he said, "The central idea is that of a land company formed not for the promotion of thrift or the spread of political principles, and not primarily for profit, but with a view to the protection of the public interest of open spaces in the country." So far he's talking about land. But then he said the functions should also include the acquisition and holding of properties to which common rights are attached, the acquisition of manors, and the maintenance and management of gardens as places of resort for recreation and instruction. So
that's manors, manors, right?
You're right, yes. No. Well, I'm sure he also believed in people acquiring manors.
I'm sure he did. They weren't open about it.
Yeah. But that's how then, once the National Trust was up and running, it got going. First of all, in 1895 with its very first property, which was just land, actually. It was donated by one Fanny Talbot, who said, quote, that she'd given it into the custody of some society that will never vulgarize it. I wish to avoid the abomination of asphalt paths and cast iron seats of serpentine design. So
God forbid the poor sit down. Right. Bad enough that they have to visit.
Yeah. When we said sitting rooms, we meant on the grass. We meant metaphorical sitting rooms.
We should probably explain, actually, for international listeners who have never been to the UK, exactly what it is the National Trust is known for. They now own 618,000 acres, including 25% of the Lake District, 10% of the Peak District, 780 miles of coastline, 56 villages, 9 lighthouses, and a gold mine.
It sounds like a racket.
They are the largest membership organisation in the UK, with 5.5 million members or more and 65,000 volunteers.
Yeah. This is a collection of places where you can go and pretty much be assailed by well-meaning volunteers who have learnt recently the history of whatever castle it is that they've been charged to look after.
And for very little money, for the cost of an annual membership.
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, you get so much for so little. I think it's less than £100 a year, and you get access to all of these incredible buildings that are the kinds of things that you see in the big sort of period piece TV shows. A lot of them actually are National Trust properties that have been repurposed.
One of the key ways they make money, yeah.
Yeah, and so you get to go in them and just noodle around in the houses and castles of the rich and famous over the last however many centuries, and it's a remarkable thing.
Yeah, forever, for everyone is its motto, and it's all, as we're saying, like quite equitable in a sense that, you know, most people in the UK get a chance to go and look around if they want to and can afford to do so. But it's such a sort of British way of achieving that kind of equality, isn't it? Because really, the reason people donate their homes is because they can't afford to look after them themselves. So it's not saying we're going to take people's ancestral homes away from them, because that would feel fundamentally wrong. You know, I'm the great lord of such and such, and my family have been here for 600 years. But the bottom line is, if you inherit a property that size and you don't have the income that comes from being in a large organisation like the National Trust, you have no choice in the end but to donate them to the public. And eventually everything ends up in public ownership by the back door. Yeah. And yet the whole project has this sheen of sort of middle-class John Lewis, it's all very jolly nice, rather than all the state's taking away my property.
Yeah. And there are sort of co-ownership schemes where the sitting lord gets to own a few of the bedrooms and the rest are turned over to the National Trust.
Equity release for
yeah, exactly. And you know, and they sort of let people in for percentages of the year to be negotiated with the National Trust, and then the rest of the time they can enjoy the thing that they can't quite afford.
And I was heartened to see that, because I think some people think that the idea that you take your kids to go and get lost in the maze and then you have a cup of tea must be a 21st century bastardization of what the National Trust is. I was heartened to see that Octavia Hill herself, writing to Thackeray Turner in March 1896 about the purchase of Alfriston Clergy House, which you mentioned earlier in East Sussex, wrote, "The other portion," having talked about the lands, "might be left as a large hall where perhaps those who came to see the place might have tea." And I was like, yes, you knew, Hill. You knew what the business model was, even then. But what shocked me, guess when they made their first tea towel? This I found shocking.
1970s.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah. But I thought, isn't that shocking? Like, the National Trust hadn't worked out until 1970.
Yeah.
Nearly 100 years into its development that, hey, we should have some merch.
The transition from tea to tea towel took 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. Surely tea bags is next for the 2100s.
Tomorrow.
Metals were not only alive, but also grew inside the earth like living organisms.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.